Hi, this is Irv Shapiro with the Dr. Vax channel. And today I'm going to do a review of what is clearly one of the largest, the heaviest by quite a bit at 23 pounds, and one of the most expensive 3D printers I've reviewed on this channel. This is the FlashForge Creative Pro 2, a new upgrade to the Creative Pro series from FlashForge. Now, FlashForge is an interesting company because they make a range of printers from devices that are a little bit under $300 designed for school environments, all the way up to devices that are thousands of dollars for industrial manufacturing. And as I look at this printer, you'll see that there are things that make it clear that this company knows how to build industrial products. Yet they challenge themselves by putting industrial capabilities into a consumer price product that sells for $800. There are trade-offs with this printer, and one of them, as an example, is that the print volume is relatively small for a printer this large. Now, to give you a better sense of the scale of this printer, I have a bit of show and tell here. So this printer is the Monoprice Delta Mini version 2. And you can see how tiny it looks relative to this massive printer I wouldn't attempt to pick up in that way. So you want to learn more? Stay tuned and let's learn something together. Here on the Dr. Vax channel, I do 3D printer reviews, woodworking product reviews, a little bit of electronics, a little bit of software. Basically, what I'm attempting to do here is build a community of people interested in using desktop manufacturing equipment that is priced for home use to make things. And today I'm looking at an independent dual extruder printer. What that means is it's capable of using two materials at the same time. That could be two different types of filament, two different color filaments, or in this case, where it looks like a single color, I used dissolvable supports and obtained a print that is remarkable in its quality. If you want to learn more about the Dr. Vax community, either go to drvax.com or forum.drvax.com, where you can discuss projects with over 1,200 really kind and interesting people, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and click on the bell below so you'll be notified about new videos. Now let's talk a little bit about this FlashForge printer. It is a fully enclosed printer, and that's why it's so big with a relatively small print volume. Let me make sure I get this right. I'll refer to the screen. It's 200 millimeters by 148 millimeters by 150 millimeters high. So as an example, you could print something about this tall in this printer. The print reels do mount on the outside on the back, and it does support two full-size print reels. But the reel mounting mechanism, while it works with any standard 1 kilogram reel of filament, seems to be customized a bit because it clips into the filament reels provided by FlashForge. I've used both standard reels that do not clip in and FlashForge provided reels that do. They have a slightly different structure to the interior open area, and they both work fine. This is an enclosed printer, and the enclosure, the hood as an example, you can see here, comes off relatively easily. Now, one of the disadvantages of enclosed printers is unless they're extremely well ventilated, they have a lot of internal fans, you have to take off the enclosure or at least the top, and open the door when printing PLA. Otherwise, your PLA will remain too soft and you'll have trouble with overhangs and bridges. So they recommend right in the manual that you open the doors when printing PLA. This is a dual extruder printer, and they're independent, completely independent print heads. Now, in some of the earlier or even current FlashForge 3D printers, both on the higher end and the lower end, they use a single print head with dual nozzles. This actually has two independent print heads. That means it can print two materials, or it can print two prints at the same time, either in mirror or duplicate mode. A very interesting capability. The front panel on this printer, and you'll hear the fans come on now. You'll also hear that they use tones very effectively when it's time to do something, is full color and very responsive and very easy to use. In fact, I would rate the setup options on this printer using the front panel the best of any printer I've used. The printer ships with their own slicer called Flashprint. I think it's pretty good. It's not quite as sophisticated in all ways as the latest version of Cura or Prusa Slicer, but it makes the IDEX, independent dual extruder features, really easy to use. It just does them very, very well. And it has a couple advanced features that I've only seen in Idea Maker, another slicer designed with independent dual extrusion printers in mind. There is a USB connection, and you can connect it to a computer. I've connected mine to a Mac. It works with Macs and PCs using Flashprint, and you can print directly from Flashprint. Now, when you do that, what's interesting is it actually copies the file to the SD card, so you have to have an SD card, and it's a full-sized SD card, not a puny SD card, in the printer at all times, and then prints from there. So once you tell it to print from your slicer, you can turn off your computer. That's a wonderful design and means you're not dependent on the computer. It still gives you some monitoring capabilities from your computer, but the same information is available right on the front panel. There is no Wi-Fi capability in this printer, and that's a bit unusual for FlashForge, where Wi-Fi is available in other printers, both on the low end and the high end of their space. The print surface appears to be a material manufactured by 3M, because it says 3M on the back, and it holds the prints extremely well. In fact, maybe a little too well, so that you need to use a scraper. I use a single-edged razor blade scraper to lift up a corner and then lift it off. On the other hand, because this is a dual material printer, I found if you print a raft under it with dissolvable filament, that lifts off much more easily, and then it's really easy to get off. When using dual filaments, as I indicated, you can do multiple colors, multiple materials. In this case, as I said, I used dissolvable filaments to get a really high quality print. Now, one of the challenges with IDEX printers is you have to properly align the printhead. So when one printhead goes to a particular point, and then you want to start with the other material at that same point, they're exactly in the same place. There is a calibration capability built into the front panel of this printer, and it works quite well. In fact, I found my printer from the factory was properly calibrated. Now let's look at this front panel for a moment, and you'll see you have print, preheat, and tools. When you first turn on the printer, this will go to a wizard when it's newly initialized, and that will walk you through leveling the print bed and aligning the print heads. However, I found it wasn't completely clear in that wizard that you have to have filament loaded in both extruders before you go to do the alignment. So another way to do it is to skip the wizard and do it step by step under your own control. To do that, go to Tools, and then you'll see here there's an option to level the print head. In many IDEX printers, you fix one head, you align it, and then you align the other one to it. In this printer, you actually can move both. There are Z offset alignments for both print heads. The printer ships with a very nice mylar sheet that you use for your alignment. I'm going to stand up here a little bit so I can get to this. And you would put that on the surface of your printer when you go to align the print head. And it walks you through right on the front panel, the individual steps. And it's going to align 3 points. Basically, the 3 points that are right over the screws. So there are screws with knobs in 3 places on this printer. You first tighten them all the way down. That's in the instructions. It's a very good instruction. So it pulls the print head down before you go to do your first alignment. That will ensure your print head does not crash into the surface. Very good advice for aligning. Then it goes to the first one. You loosen it till you get just a little bit of friction here. You go to the next one and the next one. And you can do that a couple different times. You'll see if I say next here, it'll go to the next position. Now this printer has already been calibrated, so I'm not going to mess with it. So it goes to the next position, then over the final knob. Now one other thing that's a little different than another brand of IDEX printers I have, in this case the right extruder seems to be extruder 1, the primary extruder, whereas another printer I recently reviewed, it was extruder 2. Let's go to the next position. And now it's going to go to the center, just so you can do a final check. And then I'm going to click Finish. Now it immediately goes to ask me next if I want to calibrate my Z offset. That's going to be a similar process in the center, and it's going to do it for each of the 2 nozzles, and it's going to give you the ability via the front panel to set your Z offset. So you can actually set it, slide your sheet till it just has a bit of friction, and you get that just right. So let's show you what that looks like. I'll say yes here. So first it's homing. And now it's asking me if I want to do the left one or the right one first. And it makes no difference because as I shared, you can take and adjust them both. So let's say you wanted to do the left one. And I can slide this under before it gets to the position. And you should have just a bit of friction there. And now it's going to ask me if I want to align the x-axis. Now aligning the x-axis means that you take the 2 nozzles and you ensure that along the X direction, this direction, they're lined up. So it's actually going to print 2 lines, and you're going to see if they line up. So if I say yes here, you'll notice the first thing it's going to do is heat up my nozzles. Now, while it's heating up, I'll mention a couple of things. You'll notice each of the nozzles is resting on an aluminum, basically, bar. These are fairly flexible. And when the nozzle is not printing, so that it doesn't leak filament, it slides over that bar. The bar bends down a little bit, and the bar effectively keeps the nozzle closed. So you get less stringing because of that feature. It's an interesting way to handle it, different than other IDEX printer I've reviewed. Okay, we see it's printing the first alignment line, and now it's printing the next alignment line. Your job is to ensure that they're aligned properly. If they're not, use the controls on the front panel to get those lines aligned. My printer from the factory, and my printer came directly from China, I could see from the labeling, it was perfectly aligned. So after you've done the alignment in one direction, you have to scrape the line off the print surface, and it comes off fairly easily because they've printed a fairly thick line. And then you go here and you say, okay. And then it asks if you want to do the other direction. I'm going to say yes. Now it's printing one. And it's printing the other. And if you look at the picture on the screen, you'll see this printer is perfectly aligned. Okay, now let's talk about FlashPrint. FlashPrint you get from the SD card or from the FlashForge website. It's available for Linux, for Mac, and for Windows machines. I'm running on a Mac in this particular case. So let me start it up on the screen and we'll take a look at it together. When you first start it up, it will prompt you for your type of printer. I entered mine. One of the things you'll notice is it only supports a nozzle size of 0.4 millimeters or 0.6 millimeters on this particular printer. Okay, the first thing I want to show you is what the USB connection looks like. So I've turned on the printer and I'm going to go to Tools, Control Panel. You'll notice it recognized my printer automatically. Now, FlashForge supports both USB connections to this printer. It supports Wi-Fi connections to some of their other printers, including their higher-end printers. But I'm going to go ahead and say connect. And once you've said connect, in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see some information about your printer. So I can see the printer is ready. It has 2 extruders and the platform temperature. Now, if I come up here to Tools, I can go to Control Panel. And this is basically the same information you see on the front screen of the printer. Now, unfortunately, interestingly enough, when you send a print to the printer, this panel is not available. So you can't use this panel to watch while you're printing. Instead, you have to use the panel down here. Now, let's go ahead and load a model and take a look at the setup of printer parameters, because the workflow is a little different than some of the other slices you may have used. So you click on Load, and I'm going to select a directory here, and I want to look for a nice simple model. Okay, let's take Phil the astronaut, single color model. This model is off the platform. Do you want to put it on the platform? Yes. So there are a lot of capabilities throughout this ecosystem to make it easier for first-time users. So I can select my model. When I click off the model, it becomes darker. When it's selected, it becomes lighter. I can move my model on the print bed. If a surface goes red, that means I'm outside of the print range. I can force it to be on the platform and centered. I can rotate a model. There we go. I can scale a model by changing the percentages here. I can click on maximum and scale it to the largest it can go. And you'll see if I go a little bigger, it goes off the print surface. Reset. Now this is a fascinating capability. This is a single color model the way it's right now. I can select cut and then draw a line anywhere I want. And then when I go ahead to this and say start cut, it will divide that model into multiple pieces. Then I can select the 2 pieces, and I'm doing command, it's control on a Windows machine, I assume. I can go to edit and I can say align the 2 pieces. And now you see here I have 2 separate pieces. So I'm going to go down to extruder here and select this piece and say use the left extruder, and select this piece and say use the right extruder. I've now made a 2-color model. It's that simple to create multicolor models. So it has the standard capabilities. Now let's go ahead and tell it to add supports. So I click on support. I can click on support options to set options. You'll notice here, very interesting, the default option is tree style supports. I can do linear supports, bars, pillars, but the default is tree style. I can say auto supports, click, and it will add supports. Now you'll notice it's added supports both to the print bed and also, and let's zoom in here a little bit, it's added supports that go between parts of the model. So how do you slice this model? There is no slice button. Well, you click on Print. You'll see some basic options here. I recommend you check Preview. You do have the More option here. Interesting language. And you can adjust some minor adjustments, and you can say OK. It's now going to slice your model and show you a preview. And there is a layer by layer preview, but it's not very good. It'll give you basic information. If you want to go ahead and print, if you're connected on a USB cable, you just say send G-code. If you want to save it to an SD card, you say export G-code. But what if I want more control than that? Well, you have to go to File, Preferences, and switch from basic mode to export mode and click OK. Now when you click on Print, you'll see something that looks more familiar to you. So you have options for layers, perimeters, infill, supports, rafts. Additions are a skirt. Pre-extrusion is a skirt. Wall is that wall around the outside to reduce stringing, and that works very well. Cooling, advanced, and others. Others includes the ability to pause the printer at a given height. And I found the options available here are really quite good, but more importantly, a lot of things are hidden. You don't see acceleration, you don't see jerk, you don't see linear advance. All those things are supported by this printer, but they're hidden underneath the front end of the slicer, and this printer produces really beautiful prints, and it prints fast, but those are things they choose not to expose. Interesting set of trade-offs. They do have some advanced capabilities such as variable layer heights, adaptive layer heights. They have a number of different infill patterns that are available. And they have good capabilities for auto bridge detection and some of the other more advanced features. So if you're into tuning every parameter with your slicer, you're probably not going to be happy here. But this printer does not use standard Marlin. I believe it uses a separate software build, a firmware called Sailfish. And you can't just connect this to another slicer. So your slicer has to know about this printer. So I've not tried it with other slicers yet. I believe it's possible, but it probably would take a bit of effort. So overall, this slicer is quite good for what you need to do. And overall, it produces both single color and multicolor prints in conjunction with this printer, which are rather nice. Now, let me tell you what I learned by using this printer over about a week, printing a variety of prints. First, the quality is good. It's very good. The cooling is excellent. The ability to use dissolvable supports allows you to get quality I don't think you can get any other way with an FDM printer. Because no matter how good you are at removing supports, when you cut off a support that's of the same material as your print, it leaves a bit of a scar. Now, if you're going to sand and paint your models, that's great. I like to leave my models natural, so to speak, in the original plastic. And for that type of model, this does a remarkable job. Number two, it's fast. Now, I often print something called a calibration cat. Let me give you an example. Here is a calibration cat. And I often print these as one of my first prints to test quality. These generally take an hour to print on most of my printers using the sort of more or less default settings that they recommend for first prints. This did it in 45 minutes. That's 25% faster. Now, I don't know that's going to hold true all of the time, but just watching this printer, it's fast. It seems very, very fast. Next, it's built like a tank. As I said, it's over 30 pounds. It's heavy. It's solid. That's probably one of the reasons the quality is good, because it dampers vibrations. So overall, I'm quite impressed with this printer. It does an excellent job both with single filament prints and with multi-material prints. And the integration of the slicer and the printer is quite good. So there must be some negatives about this printer. Let's look at a slide together. The print volume is quite small. In fact, I have another IDEX printer that I've recently reviewed that's about $100 less, that has almost double the print volume. So if you need a lot of space, you're going to have to make some trade-offs. The trade-off in that case is this other printer is more of a kit. You have to do more assembly, and absolutely requires a lot of tinkering and adjustments to get it all tuned in and right. This printer is much more like an appliance. It's like a toaster. You take it out, you turn it on, you can use it. Now, more like, I don't know, maybe a washer or a dryer. There are a lot of settings you have to learn about, but it basically, out of the box, just works. Other cons. In an $800 printer, I would expect a auto bed leveling system. I would expect a filament out detector. Now, the auto bed leveling system probably is not a really big deal, since it's a relatively small print area and there are only 3 adjustment nuts and it's built like a tank. I expect it won't go out of adjustment very often. And the ability on a system without ABL to adjust the Z offset for the nozzle, in this case for both nozzles, will allow you to fine tune it very easily. And finally, it doesn't have a removable print bed. And that probably means it will stay more stable. Your prints will be more uniform. There's less to move around, but it's really tricky getting prints off. So one solution is to print a raft on the bottom with a dissolvable filament, because I found the dissolvable filaments come off much easier. What I've been doing is using a single edge paint scraper, or razor blade paint scraper, to very gently get under the corners of the print, and then I'm able to pop it off with the spatula they provided. Now, in summary, what are the big pros? 95% fully assembled. Print quality is excellent. It's fully enclosed. It has 2 direct extruders, and I didn't have a single jam. The extruders seem to work very, very reliably with a variety of filaments. And most important, if you're looking for an appliance, you want the software and the hardware to be integrated well. Flashprint integrates extremely well with this printer and gives me capabilities that I don't even have in Prusa printer, such as good USB printing. And the USB printing is done in the most intelligent way I've seen. It sends the whole file to the printer, then it starts the print. So, who would I recommend this printer to? I'd recommend it for someone looking for an appliance, where they're looking for a machine they can take out of a box and use with multiple filaments. There are not a lot of those available. This has the advantage of it's an IDEX, 2 independent extruders. There are other multi-extruder printers, including some from FlashForge, where you have 2 nozzles on 1 moving mechanism. Those are obviously less expensive to manufacture than 2 completely independent print mechanisms, but this is a much better option because you can print 2 prints at the same time, or you can print a multi-material print. So do I recommend this printer? I absolutely recommend it for the right person. Now, if you're a tinker, if you like assembling things, putting things together, adjusting things a lot, there are other choices at slightly less money that do a very, very good job. But for a school, perhaps for a maker studio, a maker workshop, for someone, once again, that doesn't want to do a lot of mechanical work and wants to take it out and have it work, this is an outstanding printer. Well, folks, I hope you learned something today. I learned a lot over the last week. I've learned a lot over the last month about IDEX, independent dual extruder printers. If you enjoyed this, the way to ensure that I'm able to produce more and more videos is subscribe to the channel, recommend the channel to other people, click on the bell so you're notified about new videos. And there are over 150 videos on my channel. Go back and watch a bunch of other videos on the channel. Thanks so much. Let's continue to learn together.